I was definitely concerned about the years going by, and I wanted to move on. I was actually kind of over the subject matter in terms of, any fascination I had with that lifestyle, any, sort of ideas could formulate about what I was learning. I had learned it. I had learned a lot from these guys, and I had had a really wonderful ride and been inspired in many, many ways. But I was ready to get off the ride, but I hadn't finished the film because I created so much footage that there was no way. I was stuck in the editing room for 4 years. So on and off, of course, and I financed the film myself by doing like music videos and directing EPKs and series television. So I would work. That was like my vacation from Dig. And then I would go back to Dig, and Anton would always be like, "You missed everything," And but I couldn't get an investor because it was on two relatively unknown bands in America, and it was a huge pile of footage. So there was no way to convince somebody to put that money in. And then, of course, it's just like any investment. The more time you put in, the more invested you are, and you can't get out. So the footage really just wouldn't allow me to leave it on the floor. I had a 5-hour cut 3 months before that. I said, there's nothing I can cut from this. This is going to be the show of rock. And I thought, you know what, why not? I'll just create this, and then, if people want to watch it, they can watch it, and if they don't, they don't. I never had any ambition for it to do much more than that anyway. I just thought it would be something. At first I did, I think. When I first started making the film, I thought, I started the film with 10 bands. I was looking at what happens when art meets industry. So they were all 10 bands on the verge of getting signed or just signed on the West Coast of America. And most of them were in LA. And then I heard the music of the Brian Jonestown Massacre, and it was like this band I'd missed from the 60s or something, I thought. And somebody said, no, they're alive and well, and they live in San Francisco, and every label's trying to sign them. Perfect for my film. So I went up there, and I expected to just meet another band, but I met this group of what seemed like cartoon characters. I mean, it was just like they were just so animated and so larger than life. And I found them really fascinating. They had shown up late to play the gig, so the club wouldn't let them in. And so they were just so upset because here a film crew had shown up from Los Angeles. It's like a big opportunity for them. And, they had all their instruments, I remember, like piled into this car, and the car had broken down, apparently. That's why they didn't make it to the gig. And it was Anton's birthday, too. It was his 29th birthday. And it's actually the first footage you see in the film. We shake hands, and I meet him. And we end up back at this flat of his manager, Dave Darazinski, who then spent his entire college education fund on credit cards on the band. So he financed really their survival for a long time. We end up back at his apartment. People are like smoking crack in the corner, not the band, but some, random people were like, oh my gosh, there's crack. And then we meet, Joel and Anton, and Anton's like, I'm a human earthworm. I take everything, and I take all the waste and I process it. And his French girlfriend, Sophie, who had these go-go boots on. It was just like, whoa. And then 2 weeks later, they come down to play the Viper Room. It was the first show I ever shot of theirs. And he attacks the guitar player by the 5th song, and they have this huge fight in the backyard, and Matt Hollywood says, stop pretending to be God and not being able to back it up. You burn in hell for pretending to be God and not being able to back it up. Yeah, and Anton says, I don't do anything wrong, that's why I don't say I'm sorry. And then, of course, Anton advises me to demands I go meet the Dandy Warhols, and says he's going to take over the film. And I thought, no, probably not, but I'll definitely put this band in my film. And I met the Dandies. I met this band with complete attitude, who were so set in their aesthetic and so, determined to play the game on their own terms. Except that they had this Machiavellian leader, Courtney Taylor, who could actually probably do it, who really had it together and was kind of crafty and pretty cool and pretty subdued and laid back. And they had you know, but they had totally different ambitions than the Brian Jones Sound. They didn't seem to know anything about Anton's revolution. And then Anton, meanwhile, is packing up the car to go up there and be with them. So I started documenting this relationship, and I started losing interest in the other bands I was filming in LA because they were just sort of cowering in the shadows of the industry, just trying to be everything that they assumed that a major label would want to appear like a good investment, you know? So it comes down to 7 years later, and I have these two great bands and their story, and there's no way for me to give it up. You can see the basic construct, right? I mean, obviously, there's those hallmark scenes in the film, you know, where Anton pulls a shenanigan or, you know, destroys the opportunity, or they just fall on bad luck and are arrested or something. And you see the parallel of the Dandy Warhols being arrested or pulled over and then, you know, getting away with the drugs and really with like an 80 franc fine or something like that, you know. I mean, you see those things and you think as a filmmaker, oh, these are obvious edits, you know. But there's so much in between that, and there's so many choices. And it was really because I shot so much footage that it was such a painful process to edit the film, because there's really as much stuff, you know, that's wonderful on the floor as there is on the screen, more even. As Joel said, it's like probably the only film where you could actually tell the exact same story with three completely different, you know, films of footage. Some of Joel's finest moments, just, we had to be like story, 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 and anything that didn't drive that story forward. And then I had people advise me, oh no, your film's about too many different things. You gotta like refine it down to, you know, just the story of Anton and Courtney and their families. You know, somebody said, you should go back into the editing room. Ondi, you know, I don't really think this is going to make it out there. It's about too many things. And I was like, well, but that's what it was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about life and the life of these artists, you know, and life is not about one thing. So I had to kind of stick to my guns and make something that I guess wasn't obviously commercial. Everybody was always aware that they were being filmed at all times. But I was using surveillance cameras. And I was using surveillance cameras because I didn't want to shine lights in their faces. But I was holding the camera in my hand most of the time. Sometimes I would wear a big black furry hat, and I would put the camera in my hat. That's why when I walk into the La Chapelle wrap party for the Dandies, Peter says, "Nice hat," like, and looks up my hat. They always knew, and they always played with it too. They would take it and they would do all sorts of things, like blow smoke into it and put their eyes up to it. And that's why we have that cool footage in the montages, because they were just having a good time with the camera. But this was a camera that, I mean, we bought two of them, and they were, you know, thousands of dollars. We had to seek them out at a spy shop. Now they're $50 on the internet. It was like, you know, what's funny about the film is that we sort of all, it like documents the advent of DV. You know, it has 800 hours of high 8 before there was time code on a tape, you know, and then we had to transfer it to beta, and then we had DV when it started, and then we had the spy camera going to high 8, and we had hundreds of hours of that too. All the black and white, a lot of the black and white stuff is shot on the surveillance, and then we had Super 8 and 16 and 35. So it's like, how are we going to tie this all together? I have a few moments where I just have to spill out my feelings to the camera, and I just didn't put them in the film. I didn't document myself or have myself documented a great deal. It was never my intention to be a part of the film in that way. But I am a very participatory filmmaker, and my style of gathering verite is definitely one where, you know, I gain trust and I keep trust by, you know, being a part of things. And me and my brother, I think the reason why we had the access we had was because we were, you know, we were there from the beginning with with passion only. We didn't have a company backing us or any money necessarily, and so they knew that. So by the time the Dandies were successful or the Brian Jonestown were more leery, they knew already we were part of the family. So in the filmmaking, you hear my voice all the time in the raw footage, you know. My brother, at one point, I begged him to come back to the project because I couldn't actually hire another editor for the film because there was no way to relate to the other editor how much, you know, all the thousands of hours. There was no way. So every time I hired an editor, I would just blow a bunch of cash, you know, ostensibly for me to get some distance, you know. Then I'd go back and, you know, so I thought, okay, my brother's the only one who could actually do this. He said, I won't come back onto this project unless you do the narration and your story is part of it. And I know it was his wife kind of like driving him to say that because she thinks I should like totally write my life story. So, you know, he said that we would need a bridge into that world and that the film really didn't work otherwise. It was just too alien. So I tried that, you know, because that was my brother's condition and coming back, and I thought, wow, he's so passionate about it, you know, let me try that. Really didn't work. And you know, everything about a documentary is feeling what works and what doesn't work. And in the case of this film, it's anything that just takes you out of it, anything that takes you off the ride or, you know, makes you think, oh, I'm watching a documentary. None of that. I didn't want any of that, you know. And so every omniscient narration or, you know, word from me was just like, oh, a filmmaker's talking. You know, it was the antithesis of what I wanted. Having Courtney do the narration, you stay inside the story. It's insulated. And I don't know. It's like the two bands are together so little of the film yet watch each other continuously. So by having Courtney do it, it threads it all together. And plus, he's the one who says, hey, he's a better musician than I am at the same time that Anton's calling him a sellout. So it just works so much better. I just feel like both bands had so much to offer. And I just felt that they had such really, really positive aspects of them and some really annoying aspects of them in very different ways. And it never crossed my mind to think that one band was better than the other, you know? I mean, I really just loved both records, both bands, and, you know, I still feel that it's really not a black and white story and that, you know, if a journalist asks me, so it's a real deal sellout story, I'm like, gosh, you really need to take another look at it, you know? Because it's not. I mean, Courtney has made the industry really work for him. If anybody's kind of lived out that idea of a revolution, it's him. You know, I mean, he went from having this junky video that they poured a bunch of money into, you know, renting 2 sound stages at Sony, and then, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars later, he's got like a 3-minute pink video made by a celebrity photographer that he asked for, that he sought because he was a celebrity photographer. And then, you know, by the end of it, he's taking the money for the video budget and building a Warholian factory, you know, called the Auditorium that, you know, is permanent and stays and is their clubhouse, and they can make videos there and they can do photo shoots and everything. So that's really smart, you know. I mean, I think that's a great model for every band. I suggest every band do that. If they get a lot of money, build something, you know, keep it. And then they're creating great songs, and they're by no means angels, and he fights with his record company all the time, you know. But everybody would appear sort of angelic next to Anton and his gang. But Anton made certain choices, and even if there's sometimes knee-jerk reactions, he's really living a very successful life in his own eyes probably as well. And he's made 12 records to Courtney's 4, you know? And he does them for $7, sometimes for a case of beer, you know? So that's pretty cool. You know, I think that both bands are pretty interesting to watch, and they're also hilarious. It's like they've cracked open Rolling Stones biographies and like fashioned their lives after them, you know? Which for me and for a lot of people growing up in the 80s and 90s, hey, we knew we missed a certain era that was very rich, where there was a counterculture, where the guitar was pretty new, you know? And these guys are like, hell, we love that time, you know, and we're gonna create a great pastiche of different elements from that time. So, yeah.
Richard Pillager cares about you.
Have to get our priorities straight. Education is a priority, our economy, keeping the infrastructure in place where it belongs. That's a priority.
What isn't a priority, sir?
If you're going to have a front burner, which is where you want your priorities, there needs to be something sitting on the back one. It's like cooking.
A candidate without a clue.
Dickie is not really a fine print kind of guy.
I'm a small government man.
That's why we chose you, son.
A handler without a conscience.
I want them dead in the water!
A dynasty with an agenda.
What do you know about the Pillager family?
The real money comes from their association with this gentleman.
You know the name West Bentine? Real estate, utilities, waste disposal.
Big money guy.
Mega.
It's a whopper, whatever it is.
And a body.
Oh, God.
Dickie, you're on the chopper, go.
Find out who it is and cut him off at the knees.
Without a name.
You understand how much we appreciate a low profile here, Sheriff?
This is not a coincidence.
Do you want them investigated?
It's irregular. Like a gringo coming into this bar asking questions. Irregular.
One man will put it all together.
When you play this game to win, you're bound to step on a few toes.
In a place called Silver City.
If you can't win the game, just change the rules.
A couple of weeks, I'm gonna have to call you governor. It's like a treasure chest waiting to be opened.
There's no reason we couldn't raise the river and lower the bridge at the same time.
There's a lot more to this than some illegal alien floating in the lake.
Don't go finding more than you're looking for.
Governor!
Don't jump the gun.
The new film from acclaimed director John Sayles. Maria Bello, Thora Birch, David Clennon, Chris Cooper, Alma Delfina, Richard Dreyfuss, Miguel Ferrer, James Gammon, Daryl Hannah, Danny Houston, Chris Christopherson, Sal Lopez, Michael Murphy, Mary Kay Place, Tim Roth, Luis Seguar, Ralph Waite, Billy Zane. Silver City.
My message to the criminals is this. You straighten up or get out.
So you support mandatory sentencing?
Frontier justice. All you needed was a good strong rope and a tree to hang it from. Yes,